Welcome, I'm Wayne DeBay, the Flower Man, and this is Elements of Design. It's fall again. How does that happen that it turns around so quickly every year? I have some ideas tonight I want to share with you, and we're going to start doing some fresh flowers. I thought maybe I'd start with a very traditional fall design, a pumpkin. This is a ceramic pumpkin, and I'm using the Oasis foam. In past episodes we've talked about this. This is a very good product. I just heard that in Europe they are going to ban the use of the floral foam because it is a petroleum-based product, and so now the companies are scrambling to find something that is not petroleum-based that will work. So far not having a lot of success with it. It is a great tool for florists and for home enthusiasts. I've got a little bit of this green. It's called Nagi, N-A-G-I, and it's good horizontal foliage. I like it because it will lay down and extend over the edge of my container. I think that's one thing that a lot of people, when they begin design, make the mistake of, is trying to contain it to the container. It's okay to go ahead and break that edge. I'm going through and picking off the pieces that I don't like. You know, it is your creation, so you have control over it. If a bug has wandered through the piece of greenery a little too much for your taste, just either pass on it or take the leaves off, and we'll go on to the next one. This is coming on as an all-around design. All around in that essentially there will be maybe an area of more emphasis on one side. Overall, though, I'll be doing it so that it can be viewed from all sides and present a very pretty face. My foam's a little bit tall, so what I want to do is to take my knife, my handy-dandy knife, and I'm just going to come in and take some of the height off of that. Studies have shown that Oasis, this floral foam, will draw water 2 inches from the level of water. I'm a little skeptical on the fact that it will draw 2 inches. It's a miracle foam, but I think you want to be as close to the water as you can with it. Got a little thin stemmed, and sometimes if you get those thin stemmed pieces, you want to do what I just did. You want to take your fingers and hold it as you shove it into the foam and kind of inch it in, if you will. So I've got a good start, a good basic base on it. I want to come in and take a little bit of, I think I'm going to use some leather leaf. And this is one of the workhorses of the industry, and I'm going to give it a little bit of gloss because I don't like the really flat look of foliage. I want it to have a little bit of shine to it. There are some naturists, if you will, who would prefer that it all be natural, that there not be any gloss. I'm not one of those. I want a little bit of light bouncing around on it. Fall traditionally is the warm tones, if you will. The browns, the oranges, the yellows, the golds. We're seeing burgundies and purples. In the earlier part of the fall, I would prefer to stay with the brighter colors, and then as fall progresses, the shades will get a little bit darker. Like I said, maybe more of those burgundies. Got some gorgeous fresh chrysanthemums. These are a button palm, they're called in the industry, and they are just one of the, I would dare say, thousands of varieties of chrysanthemums that are available to us in the industry. And there's a lot of product on a stem. You get a lot of coverage. This is a super heavy stem. They don't all come this way, but this one in itself is a great stem. And I take my knife. I always have my knife in my hand, and I want to go ahead and give it a little bit of a cut on an angle is great As you slide into the foam, that helps it slide in. I'm going to start with just kind of a, like I said, all around on this. What I'm doing with these palms, much like I've done with my my foam here, is to help kind of establish the framework of this design, if you will. Kind of build it out so I can see in my mind's eye about the size I want this to be. This is going to be something that I could envision using on a sit-down table where people sit around it. So you don't want to be super tall. They say 12 to 15 inches, so I'm probably pushing the limit here a little on the top of it. Let's bring some more, again, more of those beautiful, bright colored palms. This one is a cushion, sold as a cushion in the industry. And it's the difference between cushion and daisy is that this has a solid face. It doesn't have the daisy center in it. If you get the, and we could use daisies, I thought maybe I like the contrast because although this button is not a daisy, it has that dark center. And so I thought this solid center might be a little nicer contrast to it. Again, we're going to just take and gently push them in. When you're using the foam, as I am, you want to have it in the foam at least a ½ an inch. More is preferred in my book. They tell me that theoretically you only need it in about a ½ an inch. I like to put an inch or more in. Again, more contact with the water, more contact with the moisture. It's back to the fact that flowers are like humans, 99% water. So it makes sense if you've got plenty of fluid, they will keep going. The Europeans have been kind of the leader in the floral industry as far as innovation, and it's interesting that that has started to change a little at last. The Europeans certainly still do outdo us in flower consumption in a lot of ways, but we're starting to see some of the Europeans are looking at American florists and saying, I kind of like what they're doing. A little bit of this great celosia. This is also known as coxcomb, and it is one of the everlastings. This, if you were to take it and turn it upside down and hang it until it's dry, it would hold for a number of years. The color depends a little on the color it starts with. This probably will go a little more kind of a golden orange. Some of the reds will go more burgundy, but you can keep this for a long, long time if you just simply hang it and dry. It probably won't do quite as well using an upright in an arrangement. I wouldn't promise years out of this. I would think should be able to get with the chrysanthemums and the celosias, probably ought to be able to get 10 days, 2 weeks if you do any care at all. Let's find some beautiful big, these are the full-size carnations. And carnations, flowers are like about anything on the market. You can buy all sorts of different grades of flowers. The top grade of carnation is called Select, and that's the one that I run on. It has a nice big head. It also has a little longer, straighter stem, and I just think it's the way to go. If you're going to use the flowers, then choose quality flowers. You get a quality arrangement in the end that way. Sometimes you won't be able to tell what grade it is. They're not marked. And that's one of those things that I always feel bad about when the stores don't mark them, or maybe don't tell you what grade of flower that you're working with. Now I'm getting a little fuller, so I'm going to kind of push it in, use my hands to push some of the other flowers away. I'm running into a stem there, but I think I'm in deep enough that I don't need to worry about that. Take a little bit more of this nagi. And if you see it's got this little Y on top, someone else has already pruned it. I'm going to come in and pull that off. And as I'm looking down into it, I see the foam. And that's one of those things that as an arranger, a designer, you don't want people to see the foam. It's okay to know it's there, but you just don't want people to really be seeing it. As I said, purples tend to be used a lot in fall, and this is a little brighter. This is technically in the purple family. This is a little brighter. This is a product called wax flower, and at this time of year we're seeing it out of New Zealand or perhaps Australia. It does grow, originally it came out of South Africa, but is grown quite extensely in California. Given their water situation, it may not be grown as much right now. A lot of the growers are still pulling back on the product that they grow and going to things that take perhaps less water, or maybe they just don't have the water to grow it at all. I like wax flower because it's pretty when you work with it, and when you strip the foliage, then I always think it smells like ivory soap. It has a very clean fragrance to my nose. And some of that will linger for a while after you've worked with it. Otherwise, the flower doesn't have an especially noticeable fragrance to it. So again, pretty concentric. We may have a little bit more emphasis on one side than the other, but we're going to be fairly equal with what we're doing here. About finished with this. We can keep on going. You can keep on adding things for a long time to any floral arrangement. Depends on how full you want it to be. A couple of things that I might choose to put in here. I brought out some of the millets. And again, millets are this time of year coming on the market in great abundance, and it's kind of that harvest feel, that fullness of season. So I'm going to tuck a little bit of millet down into this arrangement, and it also gives it great motion. Millets are a little draping and they move very easily. So we've not only combined the color, we're also getting a number of textures. We've got the kind of hard blossom of the wax flower. We've got the soft, almost velvety celosias, and now we're putting this grain, this millet, and tucking that down and into it. And we could just keep on going, but I think that hopefully I've presented the idea to you. You can see where we were going with this. You can always fluff a carnation. Like I said, we've got a nice all-around design. We have some sides that there is a little more interest on, but I'm going to move on to the next thing I want to show. I brought a basket, great willow basket, and there are a number of ways that I've hooked the foam, the Oasis foam, into the containers. The first one that we did, I actually glued that into a disposable container inside my ceramic. I don't like to actually glue into containers, especially if they're a little nicer container. I want to find a way to get around that. So in this case, I'm going to I've got my Oasis down in here. I haven't glued it in. I'm just going to stick the stems through here. Will hold it. I put a piece of bind wire across there in order to hold that. I thought this might be kind of fun to add a little bit of further texture. It's got a good start with this willow, and now I've got a little bit of this vine, so let me see if I can make it behave. And if I can't, I'll always think I should have been able to get it to do what I want it to. I'm going to grab some of my bind wire. I believe I have. There we are. Great thing about being able to do the show here in the store is that all of those tools that I forget, I have here somewhere close at hand. And I appreciate being able to do that, to be able to just pick up those tools and use them. So we're going to start with that. I'm just going to bring it up. I'm going to follow the handle and kind of loop this around. And I think I'll come down on this side. Again, taking the bind wire, and we'll tie it off here just a little. You may be thinking now, is that really important? Well, I don't suppose it is. What it does is it again adds a lot of texture. It takes a pretty traditional container and it makes it have a little different look. I'm going to start with some of the beautiful Amaranthus. And anybody at Old Country Boys will know that this is really a glorified pigweed. And one of the things that I got to do as a young man on the farm was in my spare time I could take the hoe and go walk the milo fields and cut out the weeds, the pigweed, the cottonweed. So I guess I've come a long way that I now use it in design. This is much prettier than what we have growing in our fields. But it's all the same sort of family. It's an Amaranthus, and it's originally a grain plant that was brought here. They tell me that the weed is a degraded version of what the pioneers brought. Lisianthus. A lot of people think it's a rose. It is, in this area, it is a tender perennial. The winters we've had lately, it does winter. And it has great vase life, has great colors, the purples, the pinks, the creams, lots of beautiful shades to it. Let's just get a little bit of this tucked down and in. I'll turn it around and let you take a look. I think I'm going to be, again, we'll be fairly symmetrical, but I'll try to tweak this a little as we go. You know, this one, I'm not for sure that this blossom is malformed or just the way nature made it. It's very interesting, but probably as a commercial product, I would not leave it on the stem, because it looks like it's been either damaged or maybe just a little bit deformed. So let's take this Amaranthus, come into the center, and again we've got this great oasis foam which gives us a lot of ability to move things around. Placement is much easier. I know I've talked about it in the past that before they invented it, people used all sorts of things from chicken wire to bundles of foliage to make frogs, to make some sort of mechanic that would let product stay. This is another one of that family of chrysanthemums. Like I said, there's just an endless variety of them. This one is called a red rover, and it is what they call a disbud. Someone in the growing process has come along and pinched off any lateral buds so that this blossom will open and be bigger and fuller. So when you get disbud mums, that's partially why they're a more expensive product, is that someone has put quite a little labor into just getting this product to do what we wanted it to. This is fairly bright, but it's also starting to trend into that burgundy tone. with the Amaranthus. So I think we've got kind of a nice texture, we've got a nice color variation going here. Chosen more of the dark tones. Again, the wax flower would be a great addition for this. I'm on a wax flower kick tonight for some reason, so it's fresh and it's pretty, that's why. People say, what's your favorite flower? And you know, it's such a situational thing with me. It's what came in today and what is fresh and pretty, and I love them all. I told my wife many times I'm a bloomin' idiot in that respect. To be able to work with the fresh products is a blessing. And I've got some of the permanent products here on the tabletop with me as well, and I like working with permanent. It's a different sort of process. I would prefer, if it were my choice all the time, I probably would always do fresh. Permanents have come a long way, the permanent botanicals, in the last decades, and some of them are almost lifelike, but they haven't quite managed to capture the whole essence of a flower as of yet. So we've got it coming along a little lopsided, and it's a little on the dark side. So what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to take some of these, and this is a French marigold, and it probably grew in your grandmother's yard. It may grow in your yard. It's a very easy to grow flower, but it's also a really terrific flower for use in this sort of arrangement. It does have that marigold fragrance. If you put your nose into it, you'll be pulling back saying, ooh, that's not so great. But in this case, I'm looking at color and form. It's got that round form, so I've got a lot of round in here. I've got the round Lisianthus, I've got the round Rovers, and I've got the round in the French marigolds. And I think what I'm doing here, what I'm attempting to do here at least, is to create a little bit of a caged look here. That I've got these blossoms up and above this vine armature, this form that we put on the basket. And as I've worked with it, I thought, well, I like this. I don't mind this at all. But wouldn't it be of more interest now to take my color, this bright shade, and pull it down inside so that when you walk up to this, you're looking down and into the arrangement instead of just totally on the surface. Got a couple of spots I can tuck a little bit of foliage in. Like I said, I don't want to have the foam showing. This has new growth on the end, and it's very tender. If you can see, I don't know how close the camera's picking it up, but it is limp and it has been ripped, and so we don't want to use that, so I'm going to give that a toss to the floor. So I think that is pretty much what I need to do for that arrangement. Like I said, this one we've used several techniques, and the main one that I really like in this is this kind of caged effect. We've brought the flowers in low, tuck them in against the foam. That'll do another thing, as well as creating the effect. It also makes for great life on the flowers when they're tucked low against the foam. I have one last piece that I want to show, and this is Kansas, and I would be remiss if I didn't have something like this in a fall show. Sunflowers are, of course, the state flower. They are also very, very popular in the florist world. Everywhere you look right now, you're seeing sunflowers in the shelter magazines, and with good reason. They're bright and they're cheery, and they have good vase life. So I've chosen a container that is that bright yellow, that strong yellow. We're going to work with this a little. This foliage I'm using here is actually a type of hydrangea foliage, and it is mostly evergreen in this climate, but it's just a great little foliage, a little different shape, a little different feel to it. I have some big, beautiful sunflowers that are just starting to really open nicely. Come in here and again cut them on an angle. Especially a bigger stem like this, you want to be able to have a sharp point on it rather than a blunt one, so that when you're placing it in the foam, it will go down and in rather than just mashing the foam as it goes. When you cut these sunflowers, you'll find a white core in the center, and that tells you you've gotten a nice fresh stem there. We'll go ahead and place this down in here. One last one in the center. So we've got a good mug of sunflowers, and not a huge water capacity in here. So if you have this sort of container, you would need to probably check it daily or every other day at least, depending on the environment that you have it sitting in. And since we're playing with sunflowers, I want to come along and play with this particular little sunflower. It looks like it's actually another one of the chrysanthemums, and it's called a Viking. It's got that little brown center. This is probably the result of Dutch hybridization. The Dutch have worked long and hard to create better varieties of flowers, new varieties of flowers, new colors in all sorts of products. And certainly chrysanthemums are one of their big products that they have worked hard and had lots of success, lots of different styles in it. Getting my foam pretty well full. And again, I'm going to go back to that trick of texture. Another sort of millet, a little heavier, bigger of a piece. And I don't want this to be quite as draping, so I'm going to cut it shorter and stick it in so it's more, you might almost think this is like a cattail. It'll have a little drape to it, but it won't be falling over entirely. This piece is a little longer than I want it to be, and so I'm just going to take some of the bottom off. I'm going to come here and tuck this in, and again, and make those insertions, make them deep into the foam. Come back with a little bit more. And I think that probably what I'd like to do is stay with a monochromatic. And so maybe my best choice is to come in and finish it off with a little different shade of yellow in this cushion palm we used earlier. This doesn't have to necessarily be fall, but it certainly works well in the fall with the yellows and the browns, that pretty brown center on these blossoms. And I know that the clock is ticking and I'm running out of time, so I will finish this up. And we have just made a monochromatic, a single color base. Brown, I don't really consider a color in the color scheme of things. We could come in and we could add more into this. These flowers will also grow and open with another day, so I think this will be fine. And I especially as a florist, I like to do something that has a lot of life in it, something that will go ahead and open and grow at the customer's house so they get to enjoy it. I like watching that, but I think it's more important that the consumer gets to see that as well. Well, like I said, I'm the Flower Man, Wayne DeBay, and I thank you for watching.